Dean Henderson wrote a compelling blog implicating the Rothschild and Warburg families' involvement in a Federal Reserve cartel while pointing out 8 families altogether. Naming Rothschild of London, Rothschild Bank of Berlin, Warburg Bank of Hamburg, Warburg Bank of Amsterdam and Kuhn, Loeb Bank of New York as a few of the banks involved in the monopoly. I could easily mention shady transactions over oil while writing about the Rothschild family. To properly introduce my story, though, I will identify people from different time periods. A presentation without dramatization and flair will show a timeline and illustration of today's establishment. Changes in economics with energy's transformation. People are delusional if they believe our single most problem is oil. A laborer's job was made easier through industrialization and progress but created profound social expansions. Traditional agrarian societies in rural areas were evolving into secular and urban societies. Industrialized evolution in undomesticated and uncultivated societies remains a mystery. Britain, Europe, and the United States, though, show what happened and is known. Mechanization of labor and its inanimate energy sources. Illiteracy rates declined from 44% in 1950 to 20% in the year 2000. According to UNESCO, the number of the illiterate population worldwide, though, increased from 700 million in 1950 to 860 million by the year 2000. Rapid population growth and poor education of undeveloped countries were the cause. The Warburg families were bankers and philanthropists, with money tracing back to the 16th century. Originally from Italy, the family settled in Germany in 1559, again migrating to Scandinavia, England, and the United States. The Bank of Warburg and Company of Hamburg was founded in 1798 by Marcus and Gerson Warburg. Max M. Warburg, Paul Moritz Warburg, and Felix Moritz Warburg were Moses Marcus Warburg's grandsons. Max M. Warburg was a financial advisor and German delegate to the Paris Peace Conference in 1919. Paul Moritz Warburg and Felix Moritz Warburg's involvement with Kuhn Loeb and Company was from 1868 until 1964. Paul Moritz Warburg was affiliated with Kuhn, Loeb, and Company in the United States and sat as a member of the Federal Reserve Board. Paul Warburg's son James was a banker and member of Franklin D. Roosevelt's original Brain Trust. A member of Parliament, Carl Johan Warburg was a Swedish historian, while Otto Warburg was a botanist who supported colonization and agricultural work in Palestine. Jacob Schiff was Frieda Schiff's father, who married Felix Moritz Warburg. The Schiff and Rothschild families in Germany were friends and neighbors. Paul Moritz Warburg and Nina Loeb's marriage combined 2 of the world's richest dynasties. Max Warburg worked for the family's bank while a member of the Hamburg Parliament and personally affiliated with Emperor Wilhelm II of Germany. Warburg was an economic advisor to diplomats, politicians, and the German military. Appointed Chancellor in 1918, Max Warburg was a leading figure in Germany during the First World War, attending the Versailles Peace Conference as a delegate a year later. The Reich Bank appointed Max Warburg as a member of the board in 1924. Intensifying philanthropic ventures, Max Warburg gave immense support to the Zionist movement. To get their possessions out of Germany, many Jews used transfer agreements made by Warburg. Max Warburg depended on brothers in the United States for his goals to be achieved. American business ventures allowed Warburg to avoid the financial collapse of 1939 and achieve many of his goals. The Warburg Bank closed in Germany because of the National Socialist. Residing in the United States until his death, Max Warburg migrated to New York as the Second World War began. Migrating to the United States, Jacob Schiff was a banker, businessman, and philanthropist from Germany and also involved in the Zionist movement. Russia's harsh treatment of Jews was the cause for Schiff to fund Japan against Tsarist Russia before the Russian Revolution. Born in Frankfurt am Main, Germany, to Moses and Clara Schiff, Jacob Schiff's father was a broker for the House of Rothschild. With his studies completed, Jacob became the first apprentice to be hired into the brokerage. After the American Civil War, in 1865, Jacob Schiff traveled to the United States. Jacob Schiff became a United States citizen in 1870 and a licensed broker and partner of Budge, Schiff and Company in 1877. Dissolution of Budge, Schiff and Company in 1874 resulted in Jacob returning to Germany. Abraham Kuhn contacted him in 1875, though Kuhn, Loeb and Company in New York asked Schiff to join their firm. 5 months after accepting Kuhn's invitation, Schiff married Solomon Loeb's daughter Therese Loeb, bringing to the family all of his European financial connections. Teresa and Jacob were Frieda Schiff's parents, who eventually married Max Warburg. Jacob Schiff negotiated deals for the railroads and telegraph eventually. Schiff became connected with E. H. Harriman, Wells Fargo, National City Bank of New York, and Central Trust Company. Jacob Schiff replaced Paul Warburg as Wells Fargo's director so that he could become a member of the first Federal Reserve Board. One of the main contributors of the economic disaster of 2008, Lehman Brothers merged with Kuhn, Loeb, and Co., only to end in collapse. A builder, organizer, financier and railroad magnate, Edward Henry Harriman became a brokerage clerk in 1870, buying a seat on the New York Stock Exchange soon after. Harriman's involvement in the railroad's expansion into the American West is well known. With the aid of Kuhn, Loeb, and Company, Harriman gained power and influence as he rose from railroad management to organizer. They formed a syndicate as Kuhn, Loeb, and Co. and E. H. Harriman purchased the Union Pacific Railroad Company. In 1901, Harriman brought Southern Pacific within his control after pulling Union Pacific out of bankruptcy. One of many crises on Wall Street, Harriman went into corporate battle against James J. Hill as he attempted to take control of Northern Pacific. Harriman died in 1909, leaving behind over 60 million miles of track, bitter memories, and criticism from his peers, with a stern denunciation from the then-President Theodore Roosevelt. Otto Hermann Kahn was a banker and patron of the arts who worked for the banking house of Speyer and Company, playing an important role in the reorganization of the railroads. Sent to London in 1888 by Berlin's Deutsche Bank, Kahn became a British citizen but was soon offered a position in New York and becoming a partner of Kuhn, Loeb, and Company in 1897. Kahn's financial judgment was crucial while reorganizing 6 railroad properties. Otto Kahn died with 80% of all stocks in the Metropolitan Opera Company. Otto donated cash and art to museums as he gave prizes and collected paintings, tapestries, and bronzes. Kahn helped build a new theater, wrote books, and supported the restoration of the Parthenon in Athens. The incorporation of the Union Pacific Railroad Company by the United States government happened in 1862. Union Pacific Railroad built west while Central Pacific Railroad built from Sacramento east. These funding of government grants for the Union Pacific Railroad became overextended due to the Credit Mobilier scandal. While manipulators gained huge profit, they watched as the Union Pacific Railroad fell into debt. One of the largest railroads in the United States today, the Union Pacific went into receivership after the scheme was exposed. In 1893, pulling it out of debt, Harriman bought the railroad. Great Northern Railroad's development came from merging Minnesota, St. Paul, and Pacific Railroads. In 1889, James J. Hill founded the Great Northern Railroad when purchasing these railroads with the help of 3 other associates in 1876. With help from J.P. Morgan and the Northern Pacific Railway, James J. Hill also bought Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad Company in 1901. Hill gained access to cotton hauling railroads to the south through Chicago and St. Louis. James J. Hill was a man who knew the Northern Plains, a coal and freight merchant from Minnesota. Extending to the border of Canada and into the West, Hill wanted to make a great railroad. The name changed to the Great Northern Railroad in 1890, reaching the coast of Washington state in 1893. James J. Hill developed export markets into the Orient for cotton, flour, and metals, as the Great Northern Railroad also delivered lumber to the Midwest prairies of the United States. James J. Hill founded the Northern Securities Company for control of his companies, making himself president in 1901. In 1904, the Supreme Court declared it in violation of the Sherman Antitrust, ordering the company dissolved. Later, the companies did merge into the Burlington Northern Incorporated in 1898. With pressure from Russia, China granted Russia a lease of strategic importance. Located at the tip of the Liaotung Peninsula in southern Manchuria is Lushan, which was once called Port Arthur. China granted a lease that was strategically important to Russia, located at the tip of the Liaotung Peninsula in 1898. Located in southern Manchuria in an area once called Port Arthur and is now called Lushan. This dominance of Manchuria and Korea caused rivalry, which developed into the Russian-Japanese War, with Schiff as its biggest funder. Schiff's loyalty to the United States later was brought into question because of his funding the Japanese. Theodore Roosevelt was able to expand the United States' role in world politics and expand the federal government because of these actions. For peace negotiations in the Russia-Japan War, Roosevelt won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1906. Theodore Roosevelt settled big business and labor disputes as he created a bigger federal government. The United States also took a more active role in both European and Asian politics. Franklin D. Roosevelt became the first president elected into office 4 times. Roosevelt led the United States through the Great Depression and World War II. Socialist reform programs called the New Deal allowed the federal government in the United States to expand. Originally called the New York Stock and Exchange Board in 1817, the name Wall Street was adopted in 1863. A limited amount of members control ownership in the stock exchange. Like the only way to gain membership is by purchasing a seat from an existing member. With the formation of the New York Stock Exchange Group Incorporated in 2006, the ownership structure of the exchange changed. Merging with others of European exchanges going by the name Euronext NV, it created New York Stock Exchange Euronext in 2007. In 2008, the New York Stock Exchange Euronext then acquired the American Stock Exchange. The New York Stock Exchange Euronext merged with Deutsche Börse of the Frankfurt Stock Exchange in 2011.